The battle raged in the skies above Tarsus Prime, a once quiet rim world now caught in the chaos of an unexpected war. The Zarnathi Empire's 7th Stellar Vanguard had deployed its full might to secure this backwater planet, a strategic outpost on the edge of known space. The Vanguard had already fought off countless pirate raids and skirmishes, and this operation was no different. The Empire had long ago secured the sector, and there had been no serious threat to their reign for over 1,000 years. But that all changed when the human battleship appeared. Commander Vekthal stood at the center of his command deck, his eyes fixed on the view screen that displayed the massive and unsettling image. The darkness of space stretched out, speckled with the dying embers of warships. Zarnathi vessels, now floating wrecks after engaging in what could only be described as a one-sided conflict. 7 of the Vanguard's most formidable dreadnoughts had been obliterated, their hulls broken open with unnatural precision, systems burned out without a single shot being fired. The captain's mandibles twitched with disbelief. How was this possible? The Zarnathi Empire had never known a defeat like this, and certainly not by a ship of unknown origin. The view screen flickered with new information as Sub-Officer Charn hurriedly fed new data into the system. It came in, fragmented bursts, like a slow stream of fragmented thoughts. Unknown technology. Energy signatures unlike anything in the galaxy. Gravitational fluctuations far beyond any natural phenomenon. But the worst part? The ship. That ship was human in design. The architecture was unmistakable. No one who had studied humanity's history could deny it. The design was something straight out of their ancient records, crude, yet powerful, blocky, angular, and intimidating in its simplicity. The very nature of the ship itself seemed to defy all conventional understanding of spacefaring civilizations. A ship of that scale, that structure, was not meant to exist in this age. It belonged to a time far removed from the galaxy's current era, a time before the Zarnathi had crushed humanity into nothingness. For 600 years, humanity had been but a distant memory. Vekthal had seen the history. He had studied the fall of Earth, the crushing defeats in the siege of Orion's Maw. Earth had been reduced to a graveyard, with its colonies obliterated, its ships scattered in the farthest corners of space, and its people consigned to the annals of history. How could anything human still exist, let alone something that could take on the might of the entire Zarnathi Empire? Bring up all known human ship schematics. Now, Vekthal ordered, his voice cold but with an undercurrent of anxiety he couldn't quite suppress. The AI complied, immediately, flooding the command screen with ancient data, outdated star charts, records of humanity's crude attempts at space travel, designs for warships that had been long decommissioned. Nothing matched. The ship before them was unlike anything they had seen. It wasn't just a remnant from humanity's past. It was an enigma, a force beyond comprehension. Scans showed dimensional rippling across its flanks, Sub-Officer Charn reported, her voice barely more than a whisper. Localized gravity shifts, approaching neutron star levels. Localized, Commander. Controlled. Vekthal's chitinous brow furrowed. Gravity waves at neutron star scales? It was impossible. Such an effect could only be caused by the collapse of massive stellar bodies, collapsing inward under their own gravity. To manipulate gravity like that, to harness that power, was a level of control over the very fabric of the universe that even the greatest minds of the Zarnathi Empire had only dreamed of. And yet, the human ship was doing it, not through brute force, but with the precision of a master craftsman, as if it were second nature. The command deck buzzed with frantic reports, but Vekthal's focus never wavered. He could feel the unease spreading among the crew like a contagion. Everyone, on the deck, from the seasoned officers to the youngest crew members, was suddenly acutely aware of one terrifying fact. They were no longer in control. They were at the mercy of an unknown force that defied all logic. As the human ship slowly rotated, revealing its full form, the magnitude of its size became apparent. It wasn't just a battleship. It was a floating fortress. A massive, darkened behemoth, its hull covered in jagged angular panels that shimmered in hues of obsidian and silver. There were no smooth, symmetrical curves like the Zarnathi ships. Instead, it was as if someone had welded giant blocks together, forming an unholy, hybrid of human tenacity and something far beyond their understanding. The ship moved not with the sharp, jerking motions of conventional engines, but with an eerie, deliberate grace that bent space itself around its form. And then, as if it had been waiting for the right moment, the ship's weaponry activated. Vekthal had seen weapons of unimaginable power before. Neutron beams capable of incinerating fleets in seconds. Plasma cannons that turned entire planets into ash. But what he saw now was something else. Something incomprehensible. A rippling, oscillating energy field cascaded from the ship's forward plating, flaring to life in a series of sharp pulses that seemed to bend space and time around them. It was no ordinary energy beam. No, this weapon didn't just fire at targets. It warped them. It was as though the fabric of the galaxy itself was being twisted, pulled apart, and reshaped into something unrecognizable. Ships, entire dreadnoughts, dissolved before Vekthal's eyes, their hulls warped beyond recognition. "Commander! There—" Charn started to speak, but her voice faltered as the energy burst from the human ship again, this time cascading through the ranks of the Zarnathi fleet. There was no time for warning, no time for action. One ship, just one. And it was wiping them out. Not with force, not with sheer firepower, but with a kind of chilling inevitability. A certainty that no matter how strong they were, no matter how advanced their technology was, they were powerless to stop it. The entire fleet seemed to freeze, in place, as though every officer, every commander, every soldier aboard their ships had been hit with the same realization. The unspoken truth hung in the air like a heavy cloud. They were up against something far beyond them. Something they could never have anticipated. A transmission crackled across the communication channels. Static. Then, 3 words, distorted, but clear, cut through the chaos. "Judgment has arrived." Vekthal felt his breath catch in his throat. His mandibles clicked in disbelief. That voice, it couldn't be real. Could it? Humanity was not gone. It had returned, and it was more terrifying than anything they could have imagined. The transmission was brief, but its impact was undeniable. Vekthal stood frozen, his mind struggling to make sense of what was unfolding. The words, "Judgment has arrived," were not a threat. They were a promise, and that promise was as unsettling as it was ominous. This wasn't just another battle, another skirmish in a long history of galactic wars. This was something fundamentally different. Humanity had returned. For centuries, the Zarnathi had enjoyed unrivaled dominance. Their empire stretched across dozens of star systems, and their technology, once advanced beyond comprehension, had only become more sophisticated with time. They had eradicated the human race, reduced Earth to rubble, and erased every trace of its once proud civilization. Yet now here they were, staring down the barrel of something they couldn't even begin to understand. The human battleship, if it could even be called that, continued to drift in space, its movements unnervingly precise. It had obliterated 7 of the most powerful warships in the Zarnathi fleet without a single shot being fired. No explosions, no dramatic flashes of light. It was as if the very fabric of space itself had been warped, bent under the command of a power they couldn't even begin to comprehend. The ships had simply ceased to exist. "Send a message to High Command," Vekthal ordered, his voice strained, though he struggled to maintain his composure. "We need reinforcements, and we need them now." But he knew it was futile. The Empire had no defense against this kind of weapon. This was something entirely new, something beyond any science they understood. It was as if the laws of physics themselves had been broken. Every theory, every calculation, every assumption that had ever been made about warfare in the galaxy was now obsolete. The Zarnathi officer glanced back at him, her expression a mixture of fear and disbelief. "Commander, there's no signal. Their interference is too strong. We're completely cut off." Vekthal's mandibles clicked in frustration, his mind racing. He had to think. He had to figure out a way to fight back. But how could they fight something that didn't play by the rules? A ship that could distort space, manipulate gravity, and bend the very forces of nature to its will? It was as though they were up against an entity that existed outside the realm of conventional warfare. An alien force that had transcended time, space, and technology. A force that, for all their might, the Zarnathi Empire could never defeat. The view screen flickered once again, and for a fleeting moment, Vekthal thought he saw something truly remarkable. The human battleship had begun to rotate slowly, as though in a deliberate act of displaying its full power. It was like watching a predator circle its prey, knowing that it could destroy it with a single strike but choosing to toy with it instead. The ship's design was crude by galactic standards, but in its simplicity lay a raw power that no one could deny. It was unlike anything the Zarnathi had ever encountered. The surface of the ship was covered in what appeared to be dense, metallic alloys, dark, almost obsidian in color, with jagged edges that seemed to absorb the surrounding light. There were no smooth, aerodynamic curves or elegant contours as one might expect from an advanced civilization. No, this ship was a testament to human ingenuity, its form a direct reflection of their rugged, unyielding nature. As Vekthal studied it further, something else became apparent. The ship wasn't just a technological marvel. It was a weapon, in and of itself. It was designed to be unstoppable, to survive in the harshest of environments, to endure the ravages of time and space. And it had done exactly that. "Commander," Charn's voice trembled as she spoke. "Our scans, they're showing something else. There's a massive energy buildup in the core of the ship. It's not just a weapon. It's a power source, something far beyond anything we've ever encountered." Vekthal's heart skipped a beat. He knew what that meant. A power source like that could fuel the entire Zarnathi fleet for centuries. It could warp entire star systems. It could obliterate entire sectors of space with a single strike. "It's like nothing we've ever seen," Charn continued, her voice barely more than a whisper. "If we don't get out of here now, we'll be caught in its wake. And there will be no escape." Vekthal's mind raced. There had to be a way to stop it. They couldn't just run. The Zarnathi Empire was not built on retreat, but in the face of this overwhelming force, retreat seemed like the only logical option. The human ship continued to hover, silent and menacing, as though it were waiting for something. Waiting for the Zarnathi to make their move. Vekthal couldn't help but wonder what it wanted. Why had it come here? What had brought humanity back from the brink of annihilation? And why now? Was this some kind of revenge for the destruction of their world? Or was there a deeper, more insidious reason for their sudden return? As if answering his unspoken questions, the human ship activated its weapons once again. But this time, there was a difference. The rippling energy wave that shot out from the ship didn't just obliterate the nearest Zarnathi vessels. It spread out in a sweeping arc, catching the remaining warships in its wake. The Zarnathi officers could only watch in horror as their most formidable dreadnoughts were torn apart in a display of unimaginable power. For the first time in centuries, the Zarnathi felt truly powerless. Vekthal's gaze hardened. It was clear now. This was no ordinary battle. It was the beginning of something far greater. Something that would change the fate of the entire galaxy. "Prepare for battle," he said, his voice calm but resolute. "We may not survive this, but we will go down fighting. I will not let humanity take our empire without a fight." But deep down, Vekthal knew the truth. This wasn't just a war for survival. It was a war for the future of the galaxy. A war that would decide which species would rule the stars, and the human battleship, that battleship, was the harbinger of a new era, one in which the Zarnathi Empire might no longer be the dominant force in the galaxy. The silence in the command room was deafening, broken only by the faint hum of consoles and the soft clicks of Vekthal's mandibles as he calculated their next move. The Zarnathi fleet was broken, shattered beyond repair. He had never witnessed anything like it in all his years of military service. The human ship, its power unparalleled, had crippled their forces in mere moments. And yet, here they were, standing at the precipice of a decision that could alter the entire course of galactic history. Vekthal's thoughts were consumed with the weapon they were facing. That ship. The raw power emanating from its core felt almost unnatural, like the very fabric of space and time bent to its will. The energy signatures that had been detected earlier were like nothing any species in the galaxy could comprehend. The ship's core wasn't just a fusion reactor or an exotic power source. It was something far more sophisticated. It was as though the ship had tapped into the very fundamental forces of the universe. It was a vessel of unimaginable potential, a weapon of mass destruction that had not just reshaped the battlefield, but also the very nature of warfare itself. And yet, despite the terror that clung to every Zarnathi officer, Vekthal couldn't help but be fascinated. The humans had somehow managed to harness a force that defied all understanding. What kind of technology could make such an impossible weapon? What kind of minds could conceive it? The thought of human ingenuity, of how far they had come since their fall, sent a shiver down his spine. Were they the same species that had once been wiped out in a single stroke, their world reduced to ashes? How had they returned from the abyss? And why now, after centuries of silence? The more Vekthal pondered, the more questions emerged. Questions that no amount of data or analysis could answer. But one thing was certain. This human battleship, whatever it was no longer a myth. It was very real, and it was staring them down, daring them to make a move. And yet, despite the overwhelming force it commanded, Vekthal knew it wasn't invincible. All ships had weaknesses, no matter how advanced. If they could identify one, they might still have a chance. "Commander," Charn's voice broke through. His thoughts, her eyes wide with both fear and awe. "The human ship it's transmitting something. We can't decode it, but—" She paused, looking uncertain. "It's not a standard communication, it's like the ship itself is sending a message. A message from them." Vekthal's heart skipped. A message? What kind of message could a ship like that send? Was it a threat, a warning, or something else entirely? "Put it through," he ordered, his voice steady despite the turmoil within. The view screen flickered, and a strange symbol appeared, an intricate pattern of glowing lines, pulsing with an eerie rhythm. The design was unlike anything they had seen before, and yet it felt familiar, as if it were alive, as if it were calling out to them in a language they couldn't quite understand. The symbol lingered for several moments before disappearing, and then, in its place, an image began to form. The image was static at first, blurry and distorted, but it gradually sharpened until it revealed something that nearly made Vekthal's mandibles snap in disbelief. A human figure, standing tall and resolute in front of a backdrop of stars. The figure wore no armor, no weapons, just the standard garb of a human soldier. But it wasn't their appearance that was striking. It was the intensity of their gaze, a gaze that spoke of a deep, unwavering conviction. "We are humanity." The figure's voice resonated through the command room, calm yet filled with undeniable strength. "We have returned, not for revenge, but for the future of the galaxy. We will not be denied our place among the stars." The message was brief, but its weight was immense. It wasn't a plea for peace or a declaration of war. It was a statement of intent, a promise that humanity would rise again, and this time they would not be easily dismissed. The silence that followed was heavy with the realization of what this meant. The Zarnathi Empire, the most powerful force in the galaxy, had been given a choice. They could either submit to the new order, or they could resist and face the full force of humanity's wrath. Vekthal's claws clenched around the console, as the implications of the message settled in. This wasn't just about a single ship or even a single fleet. This was about something much larger. A shift in the balance of power, one that would reverberate across the entire galaxy. The human race had not just returned with technology beyond their wildest imagination. They had returned with a purpose, and that purpose was to reclaim their rightful place among the stars. "I've been studying their ship's energy signature," Charn said suddenly, her voice tense. "The readings are stable, too stable. It's as if the ship's power source is self-regulating, almost like it's alive. It's not just using energy, it's generating it. It's adapting to every attempt we make to disrupt it." Vekthal's mind raced. If the ship was self-sustaining, if it could adapt and evolve in real time, then it was unlike any technology they had ever encountered. The implications were staggering. The ship wasn't just a weapon. It was a living organism, capable of evolving to face any threat. And if the humans had mastered such a technology, then the entire galaxy was in peril. "We need to analyze their capabilities further," Vekthal said, his voice cold with resolve. "Find out everything you can about that ship. Every detail could be crucial." but Charn's face was pale. "Commander, we're already seeing evidence of a massive expansion in their fleet. That ship, it's a beacon, drawing others to it. If we don't act now, we may soon find ourselves outnumbered." Vekthal's eyes narrowed as he processed the information. The humans had already begun their campaign of retribution, spreading across the galaxy like a storm, reclaiming their lost territories. But it wasn't just about reclaiming land, it was about reclaiming their legacy. The Zarnathi Empire had made a grave mistake in underestimating humanity all those years ago. And now, the consequences of that mistake were coming home to roost. "We can't allow this to happen," Vekthal muttered, more to himself than anyone else. "The Empire cannot fall." But as the images of humanity's rise flickered across the screen, he couldn't help but wonder if the galaxy was already lost. If the return of humanity marked the end of an era, the beginning of something entirely new. "Commander," Charn said, her voice trembling slightly, "we have to make a decision. We can't run forever." Vekthal's gaze fixed on the human ship. Its cold, unyielding presence, a stark reminder of the power they were up against. The galaxy had been shaken to its core. And now, humanity had set the stage for a battle that no one could ignore. The decision to act, or to wait, loomed over Vekthal like a dark cloud. His claws tapped restlessly on the console as his mind churned through the possibilities, the weight of each choice pressing against his resolve. He had faced battles before, countless campaigns spanning across the galaxy, but none like this. None that carried the potential to reshape the galaxy in ways they couldn't even fathom. This wasn't about defeating an enemy. It was about facing the dawn of an entirely new era, one that humanity had claimed for themselves. The Zarnathi Empire had been the undisputed ruler of the stars for millennia. Their fleets were vast, their armies formidable, their technology superior. They had conquered entire systems, brought dozens of species to heal under their rule. But now, in the blink of an eye, the foundations of their empire were crumbling. All of it, their strength, their superiority, had been rendered meaningless by a single human ship. The vessel's appearance alone should have been impossible. Its design, sleek and angular, was both primitive and advanced at once, with edges that seemed to defy the principles of physics. Its sheer size dwarfed anything the Zarnathi had ever seen. Yet its power was concentrated in a way that made it appear deceptively compact. And that was just the beginning. As the crew of the Zarnathi flagship watched helplessly, the human ship had proven itself a master of advanced warfare. It was a force of nature, effortlessly dismantling their defenses, neutralizing their fleets with nothing more than the raw power that emanated from its very being. What kind of technology allowed such a feat? What kind of genius had crafted such a weapon? To the Zarnathi, it felt as though the human ship had transcended the very limitations of space itself. Vekthal's thoughts kept circling back to the same question. How had humanity achieved such an impossible victory? The humans had once been a fractured, isolated species, their homeworld destroyed, their colonies scattered to the far reaches of the galaxy. They were nothing, compared to the might of the Zarnathi Empire. Yet somehow, they had returned, not just with a single ship, but with an army that defied the rules of warfare. "They've been planning this," Vekthal muttered, his voice low and filled with dread. "They were never truly defeated. They've been watching, waiting." Charn, who had been studying the human transmissions, looked up, her eyes wide with realization. This isn't just a revenge mission. This is a reclamation. A reclamation of everything they lost. Their homeworld, their colonies, their legacy. They are not here to negotiate, Vekthal. They are here to take back what's theirs, and they will not stop until the entire galaxy kneels before them. The weight of her words struck Vekthal harder than any blast of enemy fire ever could. The humans weren't acting out of desperation. They weren't simply trying to survive. They were reasserting their dominance. They had learned from their past mistakes, and now they were armed with technology that could wipe out entire fleets without breaking a sweat. The notion of humans as a weak, isolated species, those days were long gone. Now, they were a force to be reckoned with, and the galaxy would have to reckon with them in turn. A tense silence filled the room as Vekthal processed the implications. His military mind raced, calculating the chances of victory, weighing the possibility of success against the sheer power the humans now wielded. The Zarnathi had long prided themselves on their tactical superiority. But this was a different beast entirely. They could not rely on their traditional strategies, their massive fleets, their overwhelming numbers. This new enemy did not play by the same rules. They were unpredictable, their tactics unorthodox and deadly. The human ship had already proven that it was capable of shifting the battlefield in ways no one had imagined. It had brought the Zarnathi to their knees, and it was only one ship. "What's our next move?" Charn asked, breaking the silence. Her voice was filled with equal parts fear and curiosity, the tension thick in the air. Vekthal looked out at the holographic display of the galaxy, at the strategic systems the Empire had so carefully cultivated. They had to act quickly, before humanity's forces grew even more formidable. "We must strike first," he said, his voice hardening with resolve. "We cannot allow them to establish their dominance. We will strike at their heart, their fleet. If we can destroy the ship that led the charge, we will cripple their morale, and their forces will scatter. Will it work?" Charn's voice held a note of doubt. "This ship. We've never seen anything like it. Even if we launch a full assault, can we defeat it?" Vekthal stared at the human ship's image, now flickering on the main screen. His thoughts flashed back to the message it had sent, humanity's declaration, their promise to reclaim what was lost. He could feel the intensity in that message, a certainty that rang through the very fabric of space. "It's a gamble," he said, his voice almost a whisper. "But we must take that gamble. For the Empire to survive, we must strike while they're still vulnerable. If we hesitate, it will be the end of us." The plan was set into motion. In mere moments, the Zarnathi flagship was engaged in coordinating the massive fleet to prepare for the assault. Every moment counted, and every move was calculated with military precision. The Zarnathi Empire's finest had been assembled, battle tactics analyzed, weapons readied. Yet, as the fleets powered up, one question gnawed at the back of Vekthal's mind. Could the Zarnathi truly defeat humanity's power? Could they face a force that seemed to transcend the very boundaries of war? He wasn't sure. But what Vekthal did know was that if they didn't try, they were as good as dead. As the fleet mobilized and the countdown to battle began, a flash of light in the distance caught the attention of the crew. A new ship, smaller, sleeker, appeared out of nowhere. It was too fast, too precise in its movement. A single vessel, cutting through the darkness like a knife through the fabric of the universe. Humanity had arrived again, and this time, they weren't holding back. Vekthal stood, frozen for a moment, staring at the approaching ship. There would be no turning back from this confrontation. As the Zarnathi flagship turned its guns toward the incoming human vessel, he realized something crucial. The war for the galaxy was about to change forever. "Prepare for battle," Vekthal commanded, his voice cold and steady. "And remember, this is no longer just a fight for survival. This is a fight for our very future." The first shot was fired. The first shot echoed through the vastness of space like a thunderclap, rippling through the fabric of the universe, a testament to the power now unleashed. The Zarnathi flagship's massive guns, each one capable of leveling moons, launched a torrent of energy at the incoming human vessel. But instead of the devastating impact they expected, the energy beams collided with an invisible barrier, crackling with ripples of force. The human ship absorbed the blasts, its hull glowing with an unearthly light before releasing a pulse of energy that sent the Zarnathi fleet reeling. Vekthal's eyes widened in disbelief. What was this? No known shield technology had ever been able to absorb such a concentrated barrage of firepower, let alone counterattack with such efficiency. The human ship didn't just resist, it turned the very force of their assault against them. It was as if the laws of physics themselves had been rewritten. The human ship wasn't just fighting back, it was controlling the battle. Its movements were fluid, precise, as if its captain, or perhaps something more, knew every move the Zarnathi fleet would make before it was even executed. The ship maneuvered with an agility that defied logic, dodging blasts and retaliating with devastating counterstrikes, its weapons a blur of white-hot destruction. The Zarnathi fleet had been built for power, for overwhelming force. But now, It seemed like their strength was utterly irrelevant. They were facing something they could not comprehend, a force beyond their understanding, beyond their reach. Vekthal gritted his teeth. The Empire had built its reputation on superiority, on absolute control of the battlefield, but now it was crumbling before him. He could feel his resolve begin to falter as he watched his flagship shudder under the barrage from the human warship. How had they achieved this? How had they built something that defied every known principle of warfare, of technology? Every tactic he had ever known was useless in the face of this alien human ingenuity. "We need to fall back," Charn said urgently, her voice strained. The intensity of the battle was starting to take its toll on even the calmest of minds. "This is beyond our capabilities. We cannot defeat them with conventional tactics. We need to regroup, reassess." Vekthal clenched his fists. Falling back wasn't an option. Not now. The Empire's pride, its entire foundation, was at stake. He had been raised to believe that the Zarnathi were the masters of the galaxy, that nothing could challenge their supremacy, and yet, here they were, reduced to mere pawns in a game they didn't even understand. The thought of retreat, of admitting defeat to these humans, was unbearable. "We fight until the end," Vekthal said, his voice cold, resolute. "The Empire cannot show weakness. We will strike with everything we have." As the order was given, the Zarnathi forces rallied, launching wave after wave of attacks. The ships fired relentlessly, flooding space with energy blasts, missiles, and every weapon they could bring to bear. Yet, no matter how many times they struck, the human ship absorbed, deflected, or simply vanished into the folds of space, reappearing with an uncanny precision to strike back harder. It wasn't just technology at work here. It was strategy, foresight, and the kind of instinctive brilliance that only a species with something to prove could wield. But the human ship didn't just fight with firepower. It fought with intelligence. It used the Zarnathi's own momentum against them, maneuvering with an elegance that belied its size. It would appear to retreat, only to draw the Zarnathi into a trap, springing it at the last possible second with devastating results. Vekthal could see it now. A pattern emerging, a subtle but undeniable truth. The humans were playing a different game. They weren't just trying to win a battle. They were forcing the Zarnathi to play by their rules, reshaping the very nature of the fight. Then, in a moment of unexpected horror, it happened. The human ship unleashed a new weapon, a beam of light so intense that it seemed to burn through the very fabric of space itself. The Zarnathi flagship, the pride of their fleet, was caught in its path. Vekthal watched, his breath caught in his throat, as the beam hit the ship's outer hull. The flagship's defenses flared in a desperate attempt to hold back the force, but it was no use. In a flash, the ship's shields were overwhelmed, its hull buckling under the force of the blast. The energy beam punched through, and in the next instant, the flagship erupted into a cataclysmic explosion, sending shockwaves across the battlefield. For a moment, there was nothing but silence. The stars in the distance flickered as if they, too, had witnessed the unthinkable. Vekthal's mouth went dry. His flagship, his home, his symbol of power, was gone. Destroyed in an instant by a force that had once seemed inconceivable. The reality of it hit him harder than any weapon ever could. Charn's voice broke through the shock, weak with disbelief. "Vekthal, it's over. We've lost. The Empire. It's over." Vekthal stood motionless, staring at the wreckage of his fleet. The battlefield around him was a wasteland of burning ships, debris scattered across the void. The Zarnathi Empire had been broken, its pride shattered, its forces scattered, and standing amid the carnage, the human ship, still looming in space, was a silent testament to the shifting balance of power in the galaxy. The human ship had won, but the victory came at a cost. There were no more attacks, no more defenses, just a quiet finality that hung in the air. Vekthal had seen the end of an era. The reign of the Zarnathi was finished, and humanity, a species once written off as insignificant, now stood at the precipice of galactic dominance. As Vekthal gazed out at the remnants of the battle, a single thought echoed in his mind, one that would haunt him for the rest of his days. The galaxy had just changed, and humanity had ushered in a new era, an era they would not easily forget. The human ship, their ship, drifted in the stars, a silent predator that had torn through the heart of the Empire. What came next? No one knew. But one thing was certain. The galaxy would never be the same again. And the Zarnathi would have to answer to the humans now.